Everyone. As a Formula One big fan, it's hard for me to hide the joy that I have to discuss today with Alain Prost, the professor, as they say, and F1 legend with his 4 world champion titles. Hello, Alain. Thanks for being here. My first question to you will be very simple, which is, how are you and what has this year been for you?
Hello, Guru. Nice to talk to you again. It was a difficult year as everybody, but we can't complain. I cannot complain myself. I was free of these COVID things. Also with the family, the health is okay, so which is the most important. But yeah, during this sportive season, it was quite tough, as you can imagine, and maybe even more tough for the people who were traveling even more than myself. The mechanics, the engineers, all drivers and. But we had to adapt ourselves to the new situation as everybody. But I think that so far we are okay and pleased about the season.
No, that's good. And as I said, it's amazing to see how it got back as a sporting event ahead of many other sports, and how you still engage with fans remotely. So, congrats again on that. Now, I want to, ask you a much deeper question. What do you think the drivers have been through when an hour before the tests on the Friday morning, the Australian Grand Prix was cancelled? What do you think the drivers have been through when that happened?
It was a funny situation. Not funny in the same sense, but the drivers, they try to protect themselves even more, but also they want to escape about these things even more or even quicker. For example, I was following Sebastian Vettel. I knew that in the night that he was already in the plane coming back to Europe. I did not know that the race was cancelled because obviously we learned that about later. So cancelling a race just 1 hour before the practice is exceptional, because can you imagine traveling to Australia with all the people there? Was absolutely awful.
No, I think it's a great point you mentioned, and how hard it must be for the teams. And I think one of the greatest challenges with, which leads to the next question, is one of the greatest challenges with something like Formula One is that as an individual, you cannot control everything. You sometimes have to deal with technical issues, or in a
Yeah.
time like ours, a pandemic, how does a leadership team really manage to take a team through difficult times? In this case, you as a leader, how do you take the teams through difficult times when sometimes you have to make sharp and fast decisions? And F1 is all about that.
Yeah, exactly. That is why we very often take the example of the Formula One team. You have to adapt yourself to this situation, and that is something that I get used to have in the last 40 years of my involvement in motor racing, because it is never the same. Formula One was not the same 30 years ago, 40 years ago than today. It has to be a sort of a communion that if you that you want the people to follow your philosophy, your involvement, your engagement, and then it can work.
And I think one of the things I've done for last at least 20 years in my leadership, I use F1 as the greatest leadership example. To your point, everyone, the 1,000+ people, each one add up to those seconds
Yeah.
that make or break a race, in terms of how much you do, like from the chef or the cook who's making the food and making sure you're fed, to someone who's changing the tire, to the driver, to the strategy and everything. So I have a fun question for you. We saw that during the lockdown, some of the drivers, such as Esteban Ocon, were racing on e-gaming competitions. So, have you ever considered joining one of these competitions as a new, I don't know if I call it career opportunity, but a fun thing for you to do potentially?
I answer very honestly. Huh? The answer is no. Some of them are very good and very professional. They love it. It is also their job and their passion. So they find they find, I think, psychologically sort of a advantage or motivation to do it, because they stay close to their environment. But I'm also a little bit too old for that. I recognize, because when I went to the simulator, to the Formula One simulator, many times, not many, but a few times, I'm always sick. I don't know if it's the fact that I never play with these games even in the past. So my internal ear is not adapted. I don't know if it's that, but I get sick very quickly. And a lot of people, a lot of drivers of the old generation, like Michael Schumacher, Mark Webber, Jenson Button, they very often told me that they have the same problem. The young guys, when they are very young, they go from the go-kart, and then you can put them on the simulator. They have no problem with that. So you have to accept that it's different generation.
When you think about F1 or Formula One drivers, you are at the pinnacle of health. During the race, even after the race, all stages. So I know that you put a lot of energy when you're a driver to be in the proper mindset, and that you did Tai Chi to work on focus. So when you think about that journey and now, what do you keep from those days today as a day-to-day routine? Do you still do Tai Chi? I know you do a lot of cycling, so that there is a lot of that goes into it. But talk to us a little bit about what's Alain's life today when you take from that.
Yeah, in fact, I was always passionate by sport. I always did some sport. You need to understand your body, you need to understand your mental thing, and it all goes together. And I still do the more or less the same, And food, for example, and a lot of sport, and I do a little bit of Tai Chi, and then yoga, and then Pilates, and all these things. And you realize that even you get old as everybody, but if the body is trained, and you can go for not forever, but much longer than you think. I mean, I can think differently. I can live differently. It's all good, So I want to continue as much as possible.
One of the things, Alain, I'll tell you my highlight of following F1 was meeting you actually last year. I mean, I'll say it as a confession, but being a big fan, and I've followed you at least through your times and what you do after that. And if you think about it, since your days, you've been always called the professor for your sense of strategy, and that really ties to me. I'm an engineer, and a lot of my work as the CEO is a lot of work around strategy and thinking 10 steps ahead. So your thought around strategy and race. So when you look back, what distinguishes you from the others back then that made you earn that nickname?
It is a complete different environment. You still have the car, still have the wheel, your steering wheel, you still have the engine, and the technology is evolved, in a big way. But the biggest difference is the informations, the data, and it is so complex and so precise. I just give you an example. Myself, when I was driving, I was doing myself the setup of the car. So I was telling the engineers, okay, I want that, I want that, I want that. I come back to the pit, so sorry, it does not work. I did a mistake, or we went wrong. We have to do that. So it was a sort of personal knowledge, and also the discussion and the close relation with your race engineer. Today, it is completely the opposite. It is so precise in terms of information. We know everything about the tires, everything about the brakes, everything about the aerodynamic, everything about the engines, obviously, consumption, whatever. We know everything, but it is much more difficult to have the overall vision, because they are all specialists. So that is also very difficult, because if you don't have the overall vision, very difficult to control, very difficult to know everything. That means difficult to yourself to take a decision. So you need to have the trust also that it's a little bit more complex.
Based on what you're saying, it's pretty clear you love numbers and statistics, which we of course call data and insights that come in. So when you think about it, having that vision, as you said, and strategy is important, but how important is data feeding into that? What do you generally try to learn from data when you look at that?
I love data. I love statistics. I love numbers. Even when I watch the TV in the morning, get the news, and I want to see some numbers. I like percentages. I said I don't want to give you an example, but precisely a few weeks ago at track, I said to one guy, he's a big specialist about the data and things like this, And I said, okay, we did something, but maybe we could have done it better. Because if you have the data and you only trust about the data, you lose your personal feeling. So you have no more freedom, and I don't think that is very good. You need to have a sort of a compromise between the two. I am always a man of a compromise. I'm always a little bit like moving into these numbers.
The other way to think about it, I always say the combination of art and science.
Yeah.
Art is your perception and feeling and the gut, and then data is what helps in
Yeah.
science. But that brings to, when you think about 2021, technology or data would change your drive if you had begun your career, today as a F1 driver. So tell us, how would that change? Is strategic thinking different today than you were a driver with more computing assistance, or is it still similar?
Before, when I was, I was choosing my tires, and I was choosing my tires also because I had a relation with this car setup that I was doing myself. But today we have the wear of the tires. We know exactly the degradation. We know exactly about the temperature. So we have a strategy, and we have one person in charge of the strategy. He can talk to the driver, obviously, but as I said before, the driver has a decision, could have a decision inside during the race, for example. I love the period that I raced with all the technology and things like this. So it was very different because it was more coming to human side, and we were learning at the same time. If you were curious, you would be already a little bit of a successful because you were following the trend of the technology.
For me as an engineer and as a leader, F1 is the pinnacle of innovation, engineering. For you, when you look back in '85 and 93, when we winning championship, then what was innovation during that time, and what do you think is innovation today?
We had a lot of innovations because the rules we were playing with, they were almost free. So that is why, if you're looking at in the 80s, we had 12 cylinders with Ferrari, Lamborghini, Alfa Romeo. We had a turbo engine with Renault. We had the atmospheric engine with Ford Cosworth. We have different brands. Now we have much more regulation. But we have also, as we said before, more data, and everything is so much precise. So the innovation is more into details everywhere. At the beginning, we were trying things, on the track. We were experimenting, and everything is important. And before, when we had something new in the car, we were not thinking about, what could be the negative aspect of it. Today, we have to, it's like a chain, and we think from the beginning to the end. That is why we need much more people working on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think the other big change, of course, is safety. For me, I loved the races in the '80s and '90s, and when you look through that period, it was pure passion, pure the feel. You could see it. You could see the intensity when you raced. Versus now, it's interesting. I think I forget. I think we had when Lewis Hamilton was out for one of the races. The car itself is doing so much, and you have a driver in.
Yeah.
A lot of that is optimized by data. It's such a big difference. So,
Yeah, no, but you're right. But it's a big difference. But also the society has changed also at the same time. So, for example, you could accept and at one period that we had bad accident and people killed in the car, and you could not accept that. But also we work very well about the safety, about all kind of aspect, and that also bring a lot of experience for the road car industry, with not only about the chassis department or engine, but also about safety. What has been done in Formula One is really exceptional, and that is why FIA and Jean Todt was really behind this all this project. Very important to be very close to the road car industry, but safety is a key issue today, and the society would not accept that we had so many people hurt and killed that we had in the 80s.
Yeah, completely agree. And then as you think about what's coming up with Fernando and rebranding of the team to Alpine, what are you looking forward to for the next season?
It's a big challenge. It's a big challenge in different ways. Obviously, because it's like a new start in a way. I mean, the company has changed a lot. We have a new CEO, and he really has some vision about the future, not only about the different brands of the group, as you could see, has divided the organization, but also about the Alpine brand. So in a way, for us, is very strange because as I said before, we are 1,200 people more or less, and then we have the Alpine cars. We have only one model now. It is a challenge, and that's interesting because we need to improve not only the performance of the car and the team, but we need to improve the marketing side, the communication side, because we need to make this brand known, and not only by the result of the team, but a little bit by everything. And you're talking about Fernando. Fernando is big name, so together with Esteban, we hope that he will also bring good results and good for the brand around the world.
One last question, Alain. What are your key learnings or something that stood out in 2020, and then overall, not just racing and the team, but what are you looking forward to in 2021?
I think 21 is going to be another intermediate year, unfortunately, because of the COVID. As you know, we had to postpone 1 year. In terms of regulation, we had a complete new regulation 2022 now, because it was supposed to be 21. We have a complete new engine. That means really, when I say new engine, it's really like a new philosophy. And the engine and chassis together, they are so linked today that it's complete new car. So 2021, it's another year for building the car and the team, to get completely ready and performing, I hope, at the best, at the top in 2022. But that does not mean 21 is not interesting and important. It may be more important than we think. But unfortunately, if we are honest, to beat a Mercedes next year, to beat a Red Bull in the championship is going to be tough. But it is important in life and industry, sport, whatever. You are there. You want to reach this point. It does not matter if you reach it in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. In my opinion, the most important is to make the progression and to reach it. Sometimes, and that's what I hope.